All right, so I want to talk about Not a Novelty, the new record.
Yes.
But I think that there's a deeper element to this that we can get into, that we
Sure.
can try to capture.
Yes.
All right, and that is the very nature of the trombone as a part of our human universe.
As a part of our human. I mean, should we start at the beginning? Of, Gabrielli and shit.
As I'll say, as it is Mother's Day, I think that really the trombone is the mother of the brass world, and I don't think it gets really the credit that it deserves for being the foundation, being the first instrument, the first brass instrument that could play chromatically instead of slots because of the slide.
I've never even thought of that.
It's really the origins of it all.
Wow.
But I feel like in society at large, it really does not get the credit that it deserves.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, there's a good reason, probably. I mean, it's hard to, you blow into the instrument and it gets bigger. It's really weird. Yeah, but there was a time when it was the most popular instrument.
Is that right?
Yeah, Tommy Dorsey.
Sure.
It was jazz was pop music, and it was the most popular instrument. And yeah, but I think, when bebop hit, and there was a learning curve there.
Yeah.
With, at least in the jazz world. I don't think it's ever lost its favor in the orchestral world at all, but yeah.
It's easier to do valves if you're playing fast bebop stuff.
Sure. Yeah, you don't have to worry about you have to worry about it. It's probably less than we have to worry about the articulation, coordination with the arm position.
Sure, yeah.
Because at least trumpet players have to worry about, being on the right partial and being in the, all that stuff we have to worry about too. But it's the added element of not having sort of like a notch to hit,
Right, yeah. But we can also rely on our valves to get to the articulation on trombone. You got to do, you've got doodle tonguing for a reason or whatever. You got to be able to get around the thing without it sounding like you're just, too slippery or whatever.
Well, yeah, and you can, because you can go against the grain with like lip slurs and stuff, which a lot of people do and do really well. But I can't doodle tongue, and I honestly don't. I don't want to have to work that hard. I don't want to have to. It's funny. I don't really enjoy playing fast.
Okay.
If I have to play something fast, I'll work on that. But yeah, I don't dig playing fast.
Sure.
I'm sort of like the anti-trombone. I mean, it just doesn't speak to me. When I hear people play fast, I know it's impressive. I can hear what they're doing and I can appreciate it, but it doesn't speak to me. That's not something I want to emulate.
Sure. Is that what brought you in some regard to the bass trombone?
No, what brought me to the bass trombone is I missed the day of auditions in junior high school because I was like either getting braces or had an orthodontist appointment or something. So I got stuck on last trombone, and he handed me a trombone with a valve, like an F attachment. So yeah, he was just like, "You're playing this now, okay?" And
that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I actually quit playing in high school. But the band director, when I started playing again, remembered that I had played bass trombone, and so he just stuck me on it, and then said, "You're also learning tuba." I was just like, "Okay."
Sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
So you've been playing tuba the whole time. Not the whole time, but like
not the whole time, but for a long time. I started in 1994, and I didn't own a tuba until 2004.
Okay. Sure.
But I had played a bunch, and now the tuba I own is a C tuba, because when Lion King was coming to San Francisco, and I heard someone say, "Well, now I've got to find someone that plays C tuba and bass trombone," and I'm like, I totally do, and I didn't even own a tuba. But I was young and dumb enough to just be like, shoot for the stars.
Sure, yeah.
And I went and borrowed a tuba, and they heard me play it. I don't even know if this was legal, because Broadway contracts I think they're different in depending on what local you're in. But I sort of auditioned for this person, and he was like, "Well, that tuba's too small, but it sounds good enough." So I went out and I went to the store and I bought the C tuba. And that's still the tuba I have.
Oh, wow, that's something else. Sure.
Yeah.
How is it? Is C tuba as opposed to B flat, or I guess E flat would be a different thing altogether. But
Well,
do you have to
so
think about it?
yeah, it's completely different, and tuba players are used to switching keys.
Yeah,
but
in
all
a
the
weird
music,
way.
yeah, all the
Tuba
music
players
is written in the same key.
Right, but that's the weirdest. But tuba players will learn. Hopefully, this is exciting to the listeners here. The specifics of tuba, technicalities or whatever. But you in trumpet you transpose. If you go from B flat trumpet to C trumpet, you just transpose into a different key. But tuba players think of the fingerings differently.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden a C becomes a D.
Yes.
Or that to me is like impossible. I don't know how you.
Which was hard for me because I learned on B flat tuba. So trombone
Sure.
is a B flat instrument, even though we read music in the key of C.
Yeah.
So I learned B flat tuba also reads music in the key of C. So when I went to C tuba, I had to unlearn everything. I went about it as if I'd never played tuba before. So now it's really hard for me to play B flat tuba,
Sure.
even though I can play euphonium.
Okay.
I don't own a euphonium, but I could play it. Yeah. Because anyway, it's kind of backwards. And I don't like testing myself on B flat tuba because we were traveling somewhere with a band and a C tuba did not arrive. It was a B flat tuba and I had to play it. So I had to write in fingerings because I just couldn't rely on my brain to function in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder if it's because I love the trombone enough that I learned how to play slide trumpet, and that was not easy. The slide positions you got to get used to, of course, coming from trumpet where everything's just a button. But at least the slide positions are just all right. 1 and 3 is going to be the same as 6th position or whatever, or 1 and 2 is the same as 4th position. So you get used to that. But then to have to go to a whole different instrument that's a whole series of acrobatics.
I have a problem with the name slide trumpet because it is a soprano trombone.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Especially if you're coming from classical world, people get very testy about it because there is a thing called a slide trumpet, which is a Baroque instrument.
Oh, really?
Works. Yes, it's a different looking thing. It's technically a soprano trombone. Yes, but I take my the vibe from Stephen Bernstein, who's just about the only other guy who plays it.
Yeah. Well, Wycliffe does.
Wycliffe does, but I don't know what he calls it. But you kind of make up the rules.
Well,
There's like
Wycliffe
4 of us.
It's funny. I saw Wycliffe at a trombone festival a couple years back, and I was like, Wycliffe, I got him to play a bass trombone.
Okay.
And he sounded bad on it for about 30 seconds until he figured it out.
Sure,
and then he was like playing jazz on it. You jerk.
That's pretty funny. I mean, it's crazy he's playing that little thing, man.
Yeah.
It's funny, but
Yeah.
I think he cheats a little because he's using that trombone mouthpiece. But he sounds amazing.
Yeah, he could play a hose.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you well, first of all, the tuba bass trombone thing also is a common double for show work, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing that all the time.
Yeah.
What shows were you doing most recently?
I was doing, before the shutdown, I was doing West Side Story, which doesn't have tuba on it, but the one before that, I did King Kong, and it did.
Yeah.
But I'm a terrible, well, I don't want to say I'm a terrible tuba doubler. I enjoy playing tuba a ton, and I think when I'm doing it a lot, I sound pretty good. But if I don't have to touch it, I won't.
Sure.
So, but I kind of liken it to what my husband always says about, especially during the pandemic, you have to be ready to get ready. And I think I know what that looks like on tuba because I've done it so many times.
Sure.
And I'm not going to go out and win any auditions on tuba, but I think I do my job really well. Mm-hmm. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you have it, and you can do it. But you don't have the same passion for the tuba that you do for the bass
trombone.
Well,
I think I've always there's always things that I want to do on tuba. It's just, if no one's forcing me to do it and there's not money involved, and there's no pressure, I'm not under a deadline, it's a lot harder to do anything in life.
Sure.
So if I really want to learn how to walk bass lines on tuba. Mm-hmm. Since I was, for the last 20 years, I've wanted to learn to do that. And have I done it? No, I haven't. Because there's literally I've only been asked once in my entire career to do that on tuba.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, I don't really do that yet. And they said, okay. And then they just moved on, and I think it was for Jeff Fairbanks. He has that street beat brass band or something.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just never did it, so... But yeah, maybe one day. I'm still young enough, you know. The old dog can learn new tricks.
You can do anything, at any time. And that's the thing too. It's kind of interesting, actually. Maybe trombone has come back into the limelight a little bit. What with the resurgence of brass bands, like New Orleans style brass bands now, and certainly tuba. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, if you played the tuba, you were at the bottom of the nerd, pile or whatever, whatever I'm talking about. But nowadays,
kind of like the visual you just gave, of the nerd pile,
a whole pile of nerds. Yeah, but you're the bottom if you're the tuba guy. But nowadays, you could really make a living in New York as just a tuba player. Yeah. And as a trombone player as well, New York is such a rich trombone environment.
You can't throw a rock without hitting a trombone player in New York. And even here, I live a block away from Elliott Mason, which is, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra or whatever.
Right, of course.
It's pretty good. I'm living with a trombone player, and Elliott Mason lives down the street. That's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. It seems as though Astoria may be the trombone capital of the world, actually. Think about it.
Yeah, and some folks moved away, too, like Mike Boscarino used to live really close to here. Brandon lives close to here. Tim Schneer, Sam Blakesley. And that's just on this side of 31st Street.
Yeah. It's a bustling operation here.
Yes.
I was noticing that, I think 2 years ago, you were doing Jazztopia.
Yeah. I
was like, I'm pretty sure every trombone player in New York is in this place today. I was thinking about it, like, if anybody had a big band gig that night, I don't know who was in the trombone section. It's kind of amazing.
Oh, yeah, and because we start early enough, so even the Vanguard folks could come if they wanted to, yes. Yeah, that's fun. We've missed doing that the last year. And it's an expensive party to have. I mean, you live near our meat supplier for that
Secret meat supplier.
Secret meat supplier, yeah. But yeah, we're looking forward to that. Wait, here, should we do it? 1, 2, 3. Ah!
Perfect. There you go. Cheers.
Cheers. And I'd like to let the listeners know I'm drinking a Strawberry Dream Milkshake IPA by Southern Tier. Thank you. Send if you would like me to plug your beer, send all the requirements to my booking agent.
Perfect. We're trying to do that. We're trying to do that in the show. It's really trying to push beer. We're trying to sell some albums and sell some cans of beer as well. The whole process. I'll tell you, I think
smells incredible. I wish you had smell-o-vision. Smell that.
Wow. That's something else. It's got the strawberry thing. See, that's what I think that's the future of technology. Now that we've got 3D television that nobody uses, the smell-o-vision would be really critical. Although I'll tell you, especially for this particular program and all the jazz programs, it probably wouldn't be for the best. You probably have to turn out the smell-o-vision.
People do get a little ripe, especially in the recording studio. I just did a recording for Remy LaBeouf, and because of COVID, we did it sort of in pieces, and the brass section was there on this one specific day, and I got put in a room by myself without any sort of airflow, and I was like, I'm not sure I wore deodorant today. So I was kind of glad I was in my own room, but also embarrassed if anyone were to open the door.
Yeah, you can't hide.
So I was glad I ran out of there real quick.
Sure. Boy, it has been interesting this year, too, the way that people have had to figure out how to do recordings and, record. People have been recording whole big bands and everything.
Yeah.
Just piece by piece.
Manuel Valera did it piece by piece, I think.
Wow.
And Remy did it piece by piece. He had the saxes, I think, with big baffles in between them. I mean, although, when my band recorded, no vaccine. So it was get tested. The entire rhythm section was isolated. And then John and I live together, obviously. So if we're going to get sick, we're going to get each other sick.
Sure.
And Alan Ferber, flew up from Missouri because he lives there now. And the one person that wasn't there was Nate Malin. He recorded entirely remotely.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's where'd you record it?
We did it Big Orange Sheep. Okay. Because they had 4 isolation booths.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. When was it recorded?
End of September.
Okay, so you were preparing to do it in advance.
We were supposed to do it in June. This was because I got a grant, and the plan was to do it in June, have the release in, or get it to the label by November, and then whenever the label was gonna, have the release. So when COVID hit, and I contacted the label, and I said I didn't really even ask them if we could move anything around. But I just said, when do you need the album by? And they said November 15th. So I called up the engineer and I said, okay, if we're doing it this way with a guy that's, out in Jersey and everybody else in the room, how do we do it? And he said, I need a month.
Okay.
To do all the stuff. So we basically did that. We were down. We probably got it in a couple days early, but it was so much harder because of having the remote thing and not being able to rehearse. There was no safe way to rehearse.
Yeah.
Especially with having one person out of state. Actually, two people out of state.
Because of Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no safe way to rehearse, so we had 2 outdoor gigs with subs. The first one was sub for Nate, sub for Alan, but everyone else was set in stone.
Is that Culture Lab?
Yeah, that was Culture Lab. That was Culture Lab.
That was great, actually. Just as a brief aside, that to me felt like a really refreshing moment because we'd all been quarantined for like
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And then to go out and see everybody, even if we were like confined to little circles and we were getting yelled at for standing in the wrong place on the like outdoors or whatever, like it was a little scary, but that was a fun gig because everybody came out,
Yeah, we're doing another one. We're doing one on June 11th.
Okay.
So, and that'll have Nate. Nate's coming back to do an outdoor gig. He's vaccinated and he's got very good reasons for not wanting to catch COVID, so I am fully supportive of it, and I told him we'll be here when you're ready to play, and I'm just glad that he wanted to come back and do it. We're gonna have sub for Alan because he can't make it up. He's in Tahoe, which I said take me with you.
Yeah.
He refused, so here we are. Yeah.
So you recorded everything. Did you get a chance to rehearse it in any capacity? You must have in some regard.
No. Okay. So when John and I were doing some virtual big band stuff it was Stephen Feifke and Bijan Watson have this Generation Gap orchestra. I think they're going to put out an album eventually, but we were doing and some of the music was pretty hard. And John said, after a couple run-throughs of this, recording it, I know this music pretty well. Let's do that for your album. And that's what we did. We sent stems to everybody. Everybody recorded their part. For the rhythm section, it was the hardest because they had no idea what they were playing against.
Sure.
And then we put it together and, semi-mixed it just so everyone would have an idea. No solos. So they could actually use the tracks that we sent out to practice solos if they wanted to, which was helpful.
Sure.
And then, that was the rehearsing we did. So we did that for every tune except for the 2 tunes we did in quarantine. I did virtual videos for the Mike Eckroth tune, Bonegasm, and Alan's arrangement of a Chris Cheek tune called Icefall. And so everything else we did. And a lot of the music we got post-COVID. So it was really... No, we had no idea what the music was supposed to sound like.
Sure.
And I think, considering our 2 gigs had 0 rehearsal either, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing,
I will be honest, though, the post-production stuff cost twice as much as the first album because, one, lack of rehearsal. There's just stuff you do when you're sitting next to somebody you don't even have to discuss. Like, once you can see people breathe, you can see people, like, getting ready to play or how they're going to play something, and that's been the thing that I've missed most is having that sort of connection to the music, and you can't get that virtually at all.
Sure.
I mean, you can turn up a track as much as you want, but you're not going to feel that thing.
Right.
So in post-production, we had to go in earlier than we ever would in a normal situation. We had to go in and stitch the tracks together that we were going to send to Nate so he could start recording right away.
Sure.
And then he had about a week to get everything done, and he really, he listened to everything intently, was listening to John playing the lead part. Usually we split up the parts so everybody's not all playing lead or all playing second or all playing third. And this time we couldn't do that because of COVID. So John played all the lead in the session with no second player.
Oh, wow.
Which is, as a trumpet player, like missing part of your section really affects intonation.
Oh, sure.
So that was something we had to deal with. I think John mentioned it in a different, I think in the interview I did with him about like my Meet the Composers interviews I've been doing, but he mentioned that he thought that Alan and I were pretty well in tune with each other, so it made his job a little bit easier. But it's still, you're missing that second part.
Sure.
So that was hard. And then to get Nate's sound to match the sound that we got in the studio.
Right.
Which was, even before he ever pressed record, there was discussions about his mic, about distance, about the room, about, so that it was a lot.
Sure. Because there's a lot of nuance involved in just trying to get the sounds exactly the way you want them in the studio.
Yeah, and miking trombone is really stupid. I mean, I've experienced it here. You have to set levels for the loudest possible sound. Mm-hmm. And everything else, has to be below that. And yeah, it's miking trombones is dumb. I've had discussions, very brief discussions with recording engineers, and they were like, "Yeah, well, the shape of your wave is this, and the shape of the other waves is this." So it's like even just the shape of the sound that we make is different than many of the instruments that they're working with. So,
sure.
Have a whole band full of this.
Right, exactly.
Problem child.
Yeah. But I'll tell you something. Having a band, so the name of the record is Not a Novelty. Mm-hmm. And it's not a novelty. And it really, the arrangements really work. But if you had a band of 4 trumpet players and a rhythm section, it would be egregious. Like, it would be an offense to mankind.
It's been done.
Yeah, but I don't think it should have been done. I mean, I don't know if I can come up with a good example. Maybe you could prove me wrong, but even to have 4 trumpet players in any one place at the same time, you got to have at least
the Bill Chase band.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
That's the one exception.
Okay, that may be true. Actually, that music is pretty impressive stuff. But all in all, and then you can have a 5 saxophone band, but the dangers of it being a cheese fest are pretty, it's a real danger.
Yeah.
But the 4 trombones really works.
I think trombones are always playing with each other.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's something that is foreign to us, where I think, like, if you had 4 trumpet players playing together, it's oftentimes, unless they're a section in a big band, it's going to feel weird.
Yeah.
If it's just that. But also, the 4 trombones, there's precedent for it. Not only like in the classical world, but also in the jazz world. There's the Russell Garcia stuff with voice. 4 freshmen have 5 trombones on that one. But there's a precedent for it. But it's also we can be many different things.
Yeah.
And that's before you even start adding mutes. We can be many different things. We can be like blowing the walls of your house down, or we can be a really like super sensitive like wash of sound. Mm-hmm. It's all about, I think there's a lot of color to the trombone. And that was like, I mean, the whole point of the band was to really try to push the boundaries of what I saw composers doing with trombone. Composers were sort of relegating trombone to a specific function, and especially bass trombone. And I love the function that I serve in a big band. Don't get me wrong. I love it. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to see what they could do if you eliminated the other sections and just only had trombone to deal with. And I think part of the reason why it doesn't sound cheesy is because there's not one person writing all the music.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I tried to run it like a classical group where I'm commissioning people to do pieces for the band. And also, people are forced into being more creative because they can't rely maybe on the ways that they've written for trombone before.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I've said this about 100 million times. It's going to start to get to be a cliche, but I always say that limitation breeds creativity. Mm-hmm, and if you're in that situation and you have to say, all right, here's what I have for my instrumentation, what am I going to do with it? How are we going to be creative within this context and make it? But there's a certain versatility to the trombone too. Like I was listening to one of the tracks, and it almost for a second the lead trombone almost comes out like an alto saxophone or something like that. That range of the instrument is so different than, let's say, your pedal notes or something like that. Like there's such a wide range that you get a varying timbre, and the whole thing really works.
Yeah, if you even if you're not a musician and you look at a piece of music for our band, you will often see the top trombone part 4 ledger lines, 5 ledger lines above the staff, and I am for below. So it's a huge spread.
Sure.
You know, and you can do a lot in there, and just the kind of like pairing off, you can pair off different people. And I think just the trombone players in my band have such different sounds. Like my husband, John, playing lead on this album, he has such a, when he plays lead, he has like a laser-like sound, but when he's playing solos, it's very soft and introspective, sort of like his personality, right? When Nate can do anything. He can play super high, he can play bass trombone, tuba, like the best of him. He can do anything on the trombone. Alan has a lot of color in his sound that none of us have, and he brings to it this intensity and just like raw, just emotion to that. And then there's me, and I'm trying to really tap into some places that I haven't been before with my sound, and it's helping. I'm studying jazz officially right now, getting my master's, but I hadn't before. Like I just lived in the big band world, and improvisation was rarely asked of me, so I didn't try to start learning until about 4 years ago. So it was me finding my voice, I feel like, is something I'm still trying to do.
Sure.
But when I am in the role of bass trombone in a section, I know exactly what that is, and I know exactly what it sounds like and what it looks like. So it's finding the other colors that I'm trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you, I think it's really kind of inspiring that you in your position with the play. I mean, you're in like, let's say, an omnipresence in the big band scene in New York, and you're playing shows and everything. Like you're a professional, and you said to yourself, I'm going to go back to school to learn how to improvise or learn, you know, this whole other realm. And that takes a certain kind of humility, because it's easy to get to be an adult and just go, I figured it out.
Well, I did that for a while. But I wanted to make my band better, and I do feel like I'm the weakest link. Like, okay, I'm the ringleader, I'm the reason the band exists, but I feel like I'm the weakest link. And I don't want to be. I mean, I don't want to exist as like a soloist. I don't want to run like a small group and have me be the featured act. I like what we do. Maybe somewhere down the line I'll enjoy it more, but I just want to make what we do better. I want to make what we do more authentic. So if I can add to that, I will. And this, like, going back to school sort of fell in my lap, and I felt like, well, it was the right time because I had nothing better to do. And, you know, you got to jump at opportunities when they come to you.
What was the origin of that?
There was a posting in a female group that I was in, that I'm now no longer in, but saying that this specific school was looking for, part of their mission statement was to further women in music, which I appreciated.
Sure. Which school is this, by the way?
Jersey City University.
Gotcha.
And further women in music, and they were looking for a master's student. So I said, I have a vagina. And I said, why not me? And that's kind of, someone said that to me. I think it was Dave Ridge, who was the bass trombonist in the San Francisco Opera. And it was when I was auditioning for college, and he's like, well, it's got to be somebody. Why not you? And that's kind of, I love that thought. Well, you know, we're all scared to do things that are foreign to us. And especially as I'm a grown-ass woman, and I don't need to improvise. Like, my life was fine without improvisation. But because I started this band, I literally started it because I wanted to improvise on a tune that Alan Ferber wrote. I thought it was so beautiful. It was like, I really wanted to learn how to play it. And all this other stuff has just come after it and been fun and great and horrifying. I mean, you know, there's always like, I'm scared shitless every time I improvise. I'm scared less than I was.
Sure.
Every single time. I would, at a certain point, you know, I was like, I would say, oh, I'd rather be standing there naked on stage. Now, no. Especially after COVID pounds. I'd rather be improvising now. So, Yeah, but it fell into my lap, and they were looking for somebody, and I happened to be that somebody. So,
Sure.
yeah.
And you'd come from classical world initially, and then gotten into the big band scene.
Yeah, I mean, I always played big band, even when I was studying orchestral music, and it was just, that's my happy place, is being in a big band.
Sure.
That's why I will drop almost anything to play in big bands. It's in my lane, you know. I'm just so comfortable there, usually, that I know exactly what to do and how to do it. And I never felt that with classical music. I mean, I tried to fit into what I thought was going to be my world, because I didn't see a lot of bass trombonists improvising in jazz, so I thought it wasn't for me.
Sure. Okay.
And come to find out, well, people were. It's just not a common thing to have bass trombone solo. So, but by the time like I got to be an adult here working professionally, I was like, oh shit, it's too late. And then there were several women that came, bass trombonists came to New York, and then a couple other folks that like really improvise on bass trombone, and I was like, fuck, you know, I have to do something. And especially when the other female trombonist moved to New York, bass trombonist moved to New York, I started questioning, like, oh my God, I'm going to lose all my gigs because now I'm no longer the chick bass trombonist. And, you know, obviously that's not true. That didn't happen. If people can play, they're going to work, right? But it was kind of, it's what I told myself, but it was also kind of how people were acting around me when they saw other female bass trombonists, and kind of, they wanted it to be sort of like a cat fight. So I had to really fight that desire, or just that not desire, but the instinct to sort of protect myself.
Sure.
And I talked to Ingrid Jensen, and she said, you know, you need something of your own. And if you have something of your own, nothing can touch that. And it took me a couple years, but this was what I made.
Sure.
You know.
So this is it. What was the inspiration behind starting the band? Is it the band is Bonegasm?
The band is Bonegasm.
Are you worried about, before we get into the specifics, are you worried about corrupting the youth with the...
Well, no, I never was. I never was worried about that because, one, I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about that. And I don't really teach younger kids that much. Maybe high school. So I wasn't worried about it at all. But people have gotten really butthurt about it.
Really?
Name, yeah.
That's awesome. It's kind of awesome.
And
it's a little punk rock, honestly.
I was just like, well, this band isn't for them. It's my band.
Yeah.
So
are there any good, I don't know if I can ask this. Are there any good stories of like what do people get upset because of the...
There was at the trombone festival when our band played, I guess it was 2019 in Iowa. Was it? No, it was in, I can't remember where it was. In Muncie. Yeah, there was a band director. Someone told me that they overheard a band director say they wouldn't let his kids come see us play because of the name, the suggested. And I've been told that, you know, I wish I could share this with my kids, but, you know, the name and the suggestive nature, and I'm just like, sorry. You know, I understand, but I shouldn't have to, like, it's everything about the band feels so natural and authentic. And I've said that word, I think, probably once or twice before, but if I can't be authentic to myself, if I'm making music for other people, it's gonna feel that way. And I don't want it to. I want to at least be true to myself, you know, because otherwise, what's the point?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this really seems like an extension of yourself. Like you get to do what it is that you want to do and be in the role that you want to be.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really cool about it is you get to commission music from all these really amazing composers that are, you know, important to you, presumably in one way or another, that you've known for, you know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, this album had some folks that I wasn't like super close with, like Carmen Staff. I've known her for a while, but I wasn't super close with her. But I really just, I heard she had asked me to do something with her at the Litchfield Jazz Festival. She was recreating the Herbie Hancock Speak Like a Child.
Oh yeah, cool. That's some killer parts on that.
Yeah. And no improvisation on that originally, though. And
Right, it's only Herbie. That's an amazing record, though.
And she asked me if I wanted to, and I was like, and so I'm very upfront when people ask me to guest artist or whatever. I'm like, this is what I do. This is all I do. I want to be upfront about it. You know, I don't pretend like I'm, a hot dog or anything, but, she was like, well, just, this is what it is if you want to. And I tried, I did improvise over one tune, but then she had one tune that she had arranged for the ensemble, and I forget what the instrumentation is now. Is what, 7 pieces, 6 pieces, 8 pieces, something like that.
Something like that. 7 maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
And so I asked her right after that if she'd write for the band, because I really liked it. I just liked what she had to say. And I'd never heard, I don't even know if she's written for a big band. Like, I don't know anything, but I liked what I heard. So she did it. It turned out great. I've gotten so many comments about her tune. I mean, it's the longest tune on the record, so I don't know how often it gets played on radio, but I've got so many comments about how people really dug her tune. So
which one is that? Just so for the
Manta
listeners.
Rays. I think it's number 8.
I can tell you, it's number 7.
Number 7. But then, like Manuel Valera, I've worked with him a bunch in the Terraza band, because he's come in and played with the Terraza band a bunch, and I've subbed in his band once. And I liked his band stuff, and I could tell that there was a lot there, so I asked him to do a tune as well. And he actually ended up doing 2. He did an arrangement. He initially suggested an arrangement, and then I had him do an original, and then I said, can you also arrange that other tune? So I paid him for both. And yeah, we ended up recording the arrangement, because I liked it more.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so we still have another Manuel Valera tune that we haven't recorded.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
In the book, ready to go. Let's see. So there's a couple other people that we should mention here. You've got Remy LaBeouf, wrote a piece, a beautiful piece that's actually been floating around in my head all day. Amazing composer.
Yeah.
That's killing.
Do you know where he took that from? Is Bernstein Mass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, when I did, he sent me months ago, he sent me sort of like a little description, a 5-minute description of where he was inspired to write. And I really dug it. So that was inspired me to do like meet the composers sort of interviews.
Okay, sure.
And yeah, but so I've been playing in Remy's band for a while, and it's one of those bands where I'm like working hard and I'm doing all this stuff, but then you go and you listen to the music and you're like, oh, wow. It's kind of it was hard to notice from inside the storm or whatever what it was. And then you get to like take a few steps back and really listen to it. And it was so gorgeous. And I said, I have to ask you to write, and he was totally into it, and he's super organized. I mean, he does commissions all the time, so he was super on top of that. But yeah, so I've known him. He's somebody I would say closer to Ein Incerto on the record. I've known her since 1995. She was my roommate when I was in Boston.
Okay.
At NEC.
NEC. Yep.
Yeah.
My alma mater.
Yeah. Oh wait, do you know Ein?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I know her from after my time at NEC, at NEC. But
she might have left. She was working there for a bit.
And is that right?
She might have left. Yeah.
Probably before my time.
Yeah.
She was at Berkeley. But I saw her a couple times. I saw her group. Most recently, I was doing the NEC summer program. I was teaching there as a trumpet instructor, and she came in to do a concert with a bunch of people that I've known for a long time, Mark Zaleski and John Bean and a bunch of people that, and it was really amazing. Her piece on the record, Blue Salt, I think that's the one, right? That one was particularly interesting because I've talked to her. She's come on the show and done, I've talked to her about her process and everything. But before I do any of these, I really dive deep into the music. I try to listen, like really try to bathe in their music as much as possible, try to get in their head, So it was a really fascinating thing to hear that tune come on and be like, her voice coming through your band in a way. Like, to hear, all right, it's 4 trombones, but it's definitely Ein Incerto.
Yeah,
like, there's clearly her voice. But that's such a cool part of this, and I think the thing that prevents it without question from being a novelty or whatever is that you have these like very very specific characters of the people who are writing, and then also the character of the group itself, almost like a meeting of the minds, where the band as you have it, the people that you have, and the way that you've structured it has this characteristic as its own character, and then the people who can bring in their own thing. It's like a little party. It's like a melding of like whatever, these different personalities.
Yeah, I think too, just even the individual folks in the band. I mean, we talked about the trombone players, but even the rhythm section. So Mike Eckroth has like this whole Latin life, Latin side of Mike Eckroth, right? That's pretty impressive, but he's, you know, he could play anything. And then Evan has played with everybody from Grace Kelly to Dave Liebman. And Don, like, Don is a super interesting. He does a lot of this electronic stuff. He has something coming out with Donnie McCaslin.
Oh, cool.
And it's super cool. I was just listening to some of that earlier. And but they all sort of come together as a unit to play this, what's probably, at least for Don, is way more straight ahead than he typically plays, you know. But I met Don when he was subbing on a Broadway show. So it's just like all the colors that they have in their playing, you know, they can pick and choose what comes out with this band. And I think they really bring a lot to it, especially like on the Day I Tried to Live, the last tune on the album, which it's a grunge tune. Yeah. It's a Soundgarden tune. And Don did that whole thing in one take. That's his first take. And so, you know, it really was just like he let it all he laid it all on the line there, and it was really great. So I'm constantly impressed that they'll play with me. You know? For so long, I wanted just like a straight up trombone quartet, and I didn't think anyone would want to play with me, and I didn't do it for so long, you know. And it was a gig that we had in 2016 for our instrument company. John and I and John Allred and another trombone player, Paul McKee. We had this gig at Jen in 2016, and it was 4 trombones with rhythm section. And I was like, oh, this is what I like, you know. And I remember John posted a video from that gig. It was Softly as a Morning Sunrise, and because it made it on our first album, that arrangement.
That's a great arrangement.
Thank you. Well, I didn't do anything. I married the guy that did it, so.
It's a pro play.
But I was just like, wow, like, this is my happy place, you know, in terms of like big band trombone section, my happy place, but it's also trombone quartet, and it's what I've wanted forever. Like, it was a sign, and it just sort of all came together after that. Yeah.
That's awesome. The last tune is a Soundgarden tune. There's 2 covers.
Tori Amos and Soundgarden, the loves of my life in the 90s when I was an angsty teenager.
Cool. Is that what was the inspiration for those tunes? Did you just like those songs and you thought they'd be cool arrangements?
I've always loved if anybody could listen to the Twinkle, like in its original form, there's like it's just basically one chord throughout the entire thing. But my husband has a way with the melody. Like, I fall in love with him more every time I hear him play a ballad. It is just incredible. He is, you know, he's an incredible musician, yes, but what he does on a ballad, it's just like his true self comes out on the ballad. He's just a big softy and just the best human on the face of the planet. So when he plays a ballad, I hear that, and I hear him sharing it with people, and just makes me love him more. So I really wanted that tune arranged for our band, and I sort of forced him into doing it. And I think he did an incredible job, especially with how little he has to work with from the original. And often, like, I would say that this is not the first time I've wanted him to arrange a tune, but often he says to me, well, is the tune going to sound as good without the lyrics? Because I tend to fall in love with songs versus like tunes. You know, I fall in love with songs.
Sure.
So many times he asked me that question, and the answer is no. Like, Don't Explain. You know that song? Is it Nina Simone or something? Don't Explain.
I don't know.
It's a song. I've heard it. There's an arrangement someone did with Diva, but it's like very sad. But it doesn't sound good without the words. So,
sure.
But this one I thought did sound good without the words, and obviously, you know, John arranged it, and I made him feature himself, and it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. He just soars above the band. And even though we're in bucket mutes.
It's kind of great to have that bridge though between that song that you know, and then also have this whole other world and be able to recreate it in this kind of setting or whatever.
But yeah, the Soundgarden tune. So that's basically a cover. That is a straight up cover.
Yeah, boy, it really works with the trombones, doesn't it? The intro and everything.
But like, and the weird solo section is also super fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I talked to Darcy about that, and he was just like, well, he's a master at trying to get colors out of instruments that like and pairing it, like using instruments that you just didn't really think. And so he did that with the beginning. It's the guitar line. It's the
really
guitar
cool.
line on trombone. Yeah, it's
There's
incredible.
a couple other. Is there like plunger and stuff like that? Was there like a?
Yeah, so Nate's in Pixie and Plunger.
Okay.
And I forget what mute Alan has it. He uses like 3 or 4 mutes on that tune.
Okay. Sure.
Oh, sorry, dog's shaking. But yeah, he's had enough. He's going to the other room. But yeah, so the amount of mutes for that tune was pretty funny.
But it creates it's a wild color just to begin the track, and I mean it's a clear it's the guitar part or whatever from the beginning of the track. But the radio promoter that I hired, I think he only listens to maybe the first 10 seconds of every track to see if it'll work on radio. Interesting.
And so he
probably's got a lot of stuff you need when you do that job. You probably there's a lot of stuff you gotta get through.
But he listened to the first 10 seconds of that track and he was like, no. And I said, do you know that Kurt Elling is singing on that? And he's like, no, I didn't. So obviously he only listened to
right. Yeah.
But he's like, the last track is weird. That's what he said. His exact words.
Come on.
I'm like, yes, it is. And it's unexpected, but that's like, we got Kurt Elling to do it.
Yeah. It's cool, man. It's a great track.
It is so much fun. So that was inspired because I heard Kurt doing some like virtual stuff with Charlie Hunter.
Oh, wow.
And
I'd love to check that out, actually. That's a pretty wild combo.
Oh, man. It was on Instagram. I don't know if they put it anywhere else, but it was just... I love Charlie Hunter. I've loved him because Alan Ferber played. That's the first time I ever heard Alan Ferber. And John Ellis was way back. I never met Alan in California, but I heard him in California playing with Charlie Hunter.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew the drummer. And yeah, so I saw that. I heard Kurt with him, and I was like, wow, that's not usually what Kurt does. And so I contacted him because there is sort of a precedent for singers with trombone sections, like I mentioned before.
Sure.
And I said, well, we could do this. And I wanted to tend towards something that was left of center for him because I liked it.
Yeah.
And I said, we could do this. And I said, but we have this arrangement of a Soundgarden tune. He said, let's do that. I said, would you want to be on the album? He said, sure. And so we swapped. He needed horns for something. So John and I did the horns for him for something virtual. And then, yeah, he did my album.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting... First of all, he's amazing.
I know.
He's an amazing vocalist.
His voice makes me want to do bad things.
That tune in particular too, though, is like the Soundgarden version is he's singing, it's a high kind of vocal part or whatever. What Kurt Elling does with the whole thing, and like it's a very low approach to the thing, but it makes you think about it, man. It's great. It's kind of wild. There's that range I think in the human voice that maybe it's hard to do live, but people don't exploit that in the way that I think they should. So when I hear people really using that baritone range, it's like, this is cool. It's a vibe for sure.
Well, it's like, it's a dirty sound, it's just like, it's primal. That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I feel when I hear it. It's like a primal thing. Like, I don't even have to like the tune. I'm going to like the performance because it's coming from your gut, from something deep.
Sure.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's wild. The 2 covers, we've got how much, let's say, did you have a vision for how this whole album was going to go in opposite, let's say as an evolution to the first album that you did?
Well, it turned out that, because I've learned a lot about how to commission composers doing this because
interesting. Okay.
Quite often I would just say write for 4 trombones and rhythm section, and it would be a happy accident that it would be exactly what I wanted. Sometimes it's not exactly what I wanted. Mike Eckroth had some discussions about a certain part on the first version of his tune that he actually ended up changing because I was like, could we not do that? Which is, I guess, for a composer, that's the danger of showing what you're writing to the client. But
now, was your thinking just that it wouldn't fit with the specifics of the ensemble or whatever?
Well, it was one of the tunes that we actually had before COVID. So when I heard it, I was just like, it doesn't seem like this section. It's just sort of off-putting to me. It just comes out of nowhere for me, and my ear, like I couldn't really believe it.
Okay.
And that might be a failing on my part, totally. But he was just like, okay, he taught it. I mean, he treated it like, okay, the client, because I was paying him, so he was like, the client would like something else here, so he did something else there, and I thought I was much more comfortable with it, so I was happier. But that was the interesting thing when I talked to Ein about writing for my band. She wanted to make sure that I was happy, and it's sort of that's the best way to think about projects. That's how I try to think about if I'm hired for any gig, is like, I want to make sure so-and-so is happy with my performance. So as much as I might be butthurt because it's not written well, or it's unclear, or, whatever number of things I could complain about,
Sure.
Just have to make sure that person is happy. So I feel like for the most part, everybody was that way. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing because as a composer or as an artist in general, it's easy to get attached to your own stuff and to really want it to be an expression of yourself. But I also very much, I'm sure everybody's different in this regard, but I always like having those parameters, being able to say like this as a composer or whatever. Or oftentimes people will call me to write horn parts for like, whatever, their reggae record, or it could be anything, you know what I mean? And to me, I'm like, if you don't like it, just let me know and we'll do something totally different.
Yeah.
You can take chances that way and be like, I'm not attached to this even a little bit. But everybody's, it is a sensitive thing, to be like, all right, well, let's do it in a different way than you'd expected it or whatever.
Yeah. And I feel like if you can give that kind of feedback, whether it's performing or composition or arranging or whatever, it helps me as like a performer. It helps inform my performance. And I think I'd want that, as long as it's not like, malicious or anything.
Right, of course. Yeah.
But for instance, well, when I didn't tell Darcy that, because Darcy's arrangement for our album was for me to do all the melody.
Okay.
It had no vocals. I mean, the lyrics were in the parts because he wanted everybody playing the melody to know what the phrasing was.
That makes sense, sure.
Especially because, John doesn't listen to Soundgarden,
Sure, yeah.
He barely listens to lyrics at all. But so when I decided to ask Kurt to do it, I didn't tell Darcy. I wrote like a vocal part for Kurt, on Muse score.
Sure.
And I didn't tell Darcy at all. And then Darcy was like, well, let me hear the tunes, and it was kind of like I was no longer the client, he was the composer. And I sort of feel that way with Darcy anyway, because I'm in his band. But he was like, well, let me hear, any rough tracks you want to send. I'd love to hear them. And I wouldn't send him anything. So finally, when it was fully mixed, I sent it to him. I'm like, please don't hate me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What did he think?
He didn't know it was Kurt.
Okay.
He had no idea, which I think is like a testament to how great of a singer that Kurt is.
Yeah. I don't know if you would know. I mean, I knew going into it who he was, so I was listening for it. But I don't know if you just played me the track. It's such a different. I mean, I actually didn't realize that. Not that I've thought about it in depth, but like he's got such a wide vocal range that he can be, he can disguise himself sort of in that role or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's surprising. But that's interesting. Darcy must have liked it with the way the whole thing came.
He was like, when I told him it was Kurt, he was like, shut up. Because I was just so shocked that Kurt would want to be on the record. But I think he was, I've known him for a couple years now. Him and his family, they would come on the jazz cruise where John and I were, and he's such a good person to have as like a guest artist. He would guest artist with the big band on the jazz cruise. And it's just someone that, singers get a bad rap because many of them don't know what's going on. They don't know their arrangements and whatever. But Kurt knew everything, and he was just so into it and just so nice to everybody, and just he felt like just somebody that you'd be sitting in a section with or hanging out with. It's just I really dug his vibe. I dug his family, his daughter and his wife, and now he has a son. I haven't met him yet, but he's just a good egg. And plus he has that amazing voice.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was like, oh shit, any chance to work with him, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got to jump on that shit.
Yeah, right, of course. Yeah. But it's a perfect match. It makes perfect sense. I'll tell you the other thing about that track that is really cool is the trading, where he's trading. Is it with everybody, or what is
me.
Okay, that's you.
Yeah, there's an effect on me because, and that's, I will, be honest about that. We talked about sort of finding my voice. My sound is, to me, it sounds so classical, and I get complimented. Okay, so I get complimented on my sound a lot, and I understand where it's coming from because there are certain things that I love about my sound, but then when I go to solo, I think it takes away from, like, sort of stylizing my sound while I'm soloing would sort of add an element that I'm missing. That I feel like I'm missing. So we actually added a bit of distortion, like the smallest bit of distortion to my sound, just to dirty it up because he was dirtying up his voice.
Sure.
And I couldn't really do it on the fly because it's something I haven't experimented a lot with. So that's
trombone distortion? Trombone self-distortion?
But it's a little studio magic.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to. I mean, it works. The whole thing, the colors of everything. You could do anything and make it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think in jazz world, in acoustic music world, we take that limitations thing to the nth degree and say, like, this is the format that we need to work with. It has to be a big band. It has to be this whatever. But so much, like when you think about like Bob Brookmeyer adding a synthesizer to the band, or John Hollenbeck having Theo Bleckman in the band to add that color to the thing, or, I mean, to just be able to say, all right, who cares? We're going to just add this little color to the, the part of it. But it's also that, he was, Kurt Elling singing, he's using kind of he sounds like a trombone. Like
he's trying to sound like a trombone, yeah.
So it's kind of a funny thing. You listen to it, it's like, wow, this is a wild, all of a sudden the colors get...
Well, yeah, and when we heard it at first, because he did his parts first. Like, It wasn't me blowing. He did his part first.
Okay.
On that. Because we knew... I asked him to do it. So we had to send the tracks to him. So I wasn't going to do my solo, or it was going to be a scratch track, whatever. So I was going to leave it up to him if he wanted to solo. And I said, well, you can solo here. And he did. And so we just fit me in between that. So I had a little bit of lead time on knowing what he was doing. But
sure.
That's why it sounds like it fits together super well. A little more studio magic.
Well, the magic of
yeah. But I mean, no, a lot of people don't realize that many, many, many recordings that we all know and love are done that way.
Sure.
Randy Brecker does most of his recording from his home. Any recording you see, well, I don't want to say that because I don't know him well enough to say that, but I know one year that Darcy and Alan were both up for Grammys. Randy was on a record that won, that he recorded all of his parts from home. So, I mean, who cares how the cat was skinned? The cat is skinned.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure, in a very morbid...
Yeah, sorry, I know, you're a cat owner. I've had a lot of people say that to me recently, so it's in my head. There's got to be a better analogy.
Yeah, it's like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Like,
who's
throwing stones at birds anymore?
Can we leave the animals alone?
This is what's happening.
There's no dog analogies like that,
No, because we like dogs. Human beings
like
and
dogs.
dogs have that primal connection. Yeah, for sure. When you are now... You've had many years as a professional in this field, as you continue and listening to music and being a part of the big band scene and everything, as you learn more about improvisation and finding your own personal voice as an improviser. What is that process like? Like, do you think about the specifics of what you're going for stylistically, or are you just trying to express what's already floating around in your head?
I think a lot of it is language. You know, they say the best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself. So, like, move to the country or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So I started a band. So that was, you know, my moving to the country.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So for now, what my lessons look like and whatever, it's a combination of my teacher, Rob Edwards, who you and I both know, he's trying to get me to learn some of the basic shit that everybody knows. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to figure out if it's applicable to what I want to do. Because often, like he said one week, he was like, I want you to learn Mood Indigo. And I'm like, nah. And I'm an old ass master's student, and I can kind of say that to him. I'm like, yeah, I'm never gonna do that.
Well, what about Mood Indigo? What
I just didn't like it.
Really? You don't like that too?
I mean, I like it to listen to, but I don't want to learn it.
Okay.
Nah, I don't ever want to play that tune. Never.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that part of your sound is what you don't like as much as it is what you do like, and that's a part of the thing.
I don't care about
That's hilarious. Honestly, just because I feel like I've never thought any way about. I don't think that you're being hateful of Mood Indigo.
Not at all.
But I do. I like. There's a part of me that likes the dissent. Like I really like kind of like. No, I'm not doing that. But it's funny. I've never thought about that with Mood Indigo. It seems like such a, I don't know, it's like part of the collective psyche or something like that.
And the thing is like, you know, when you're teaching a normal student in college, you don't know what they're going to grow up to be. You don't know what they're going to do with that information. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of like, I know what I'm going to do with this information, and I don't want to learn that.
Sure.
You know, he can't argue with me. Well, you might need this someday. Nah.
You know exactly what you're going to need because you're in it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
some respects.
Because I can actively choose what I do and don't do.
Right.
And you know, that extends to college for me as an old-ass master's student. Well, now, sometimes it doesn't because I was in a composition class where I got my ass kicked, but, you know.
But you want that.
Yeah.
What would be an example of something that you are trying to aim towards? On the other side of this spectrum.
On the other side, so, I'm like, because I'm thinking sort of, okay, well, how can I take what I'm learning and how I'm learning it and relate it to jazz curious people? Because there are jazz curious people out there.
What do you mean when you say that?
Jazz curious, like people like me that were professionals, but kind of want to dip the toe in. But the ocean is a formidable force. Sure. And it is an ocean of jazz. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I'm lucky I live with a very fine educator, John Fedchuk. He had a music education degree, you know.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was before they had jazz degrees.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
He's not old. But he is very good at describing sort of like looking at a tune macro versus micro. So I was just experimenting today with writing an etude on rhythm changes. Mm-hmm. Like, not just for me, but just for people like me that sort of look at music in a certain way, how I grew up looking at music not as a jazz musician. So you could play rhythm changes entirely in B flat if you avoid certain notes. Mm-hmm. You could play rhythm changes. No one ever tells you that. No one ever tells you could play all those measures as long as you don't play these certain notes certain places, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, well, what if I approached my etude like that? Like every 8 bars, I add another element that they might need, or maybe it's like 8 different versions of the same etude. Mm. So I'm trying to sort of learn how to learn things. Mm-hmm. Not just for me, just for other people that might want to do it, but also for the next tune that I have to learn.
Sure.
So kind of seeing those things. And I think writing helps. I liked composition when I was in junior college. And then when I went to NEC, I never did it again. And then I never touched it. Like, I basically never touched it since junior college. So getting into composition again and studying with Gary Dial, who's phenomenal and super fun. He's like a salty dude. But it really, like, I was like, wow, it's opened up a whole new area of music that I had not, I didn't think it was for me.
Sure.
So now
that's amazing.
Yeah. And I can write etudes for myself. I can write things that, how to work on things. I wrote an arrangement for my band. I don't know if I love it, but I mean, I wrote and arranged about 2/3 of it, and then John finished it because we got commissioned by some jazz fans that are awesome, and they were like, "Well, write a tune. We're going to commission you to write a tune." So it's done, and it just has to be mixed.
Sure.
It's just like all virtual, but. So that's like what I'm really enjoying getting into, and learning and doing more of that. There's so much that I don't know, but I feel like most jazz musicians feel that way. It's like the more you know,
sea of
right. The more you know you don't know.
That is exactly right, and that's one of the that is maybe I don't know, but it's one of the things that drives me forwards in music. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to pursue being a musician. Because you can learn to be, I mean, it's probably true of many fields, so I won't bring up a particular field so I don't catch any flack from the people who do it. But
it's like being in a science, because you're constantly going, okay, well, we know this. Let's figure out what else we don't know.
Right, yeah.
You're exploring space. You know, it's
sure.
Yeah, it's... never ending.
Right. And I'll tell you something else is about jazz music in particular, is it's such a wide field. I mean, we have the whole, and one of the things that's interesting about talking to people in this, one of my missions is to talk to the whole wide range, you know what I'm saying? Because you could be a jazz musician and be just completely immersed in, old, like, Louis Armstrong, Hot
and there
Five
are those
stuff.
people. There's a whole band full of...
there sure are. There are many of them in New York. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they may not have any relationship with Dizzy Gillespie or bebop, and then the bebop guys may not have any relationship with any kind of, like, let's say funk or groove music or whatever. There's a whole realm. I mean, there's like, you have like Mulatu Astake playing Ethiopian jazz music, and like there's a whole like all these realms. But I think one of the things that you run into is the jazz, the whole jazz language has been codified in education for the last 50 years. So there are things that you're supposed to know this, but there's a lot of people that are super high level professional musicians who have just completely skirted past that without, and rightly so, without consequence. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter whether Lester Bowie knew how to play, a perfect rhythm changes chorus or whatever. Like, it's not the same. It's just two different worlds. Or whether Sun Ra was trying to play, I don't know, Charlie Parker or whatever. It doesn't matter. Those are kind of meaningless. So where you're coming from, especially I think from maybe like a classical background and getting into the big band thing, like that's its own language. That's its own sort of formation of your own personal sound. That then to look at it as a student is a really interesting trajectory, I think, because now you're looking at it from the perspective of somebody who already has a vocabulary or a background. And now you get to sort of, let's say, bring into that whatever it is that you want.
I feel like, and it's a responsibility I don't take lightly, because I want to use my time wisely, because I realize as everybody, like anybody that's a student, when you get out of school, you're like, oh shit, no one's making me do anything. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
Especially in pandemic times, I think.
But I have to say, like, between the break between the first semester and the second semester, I was doing stuff. Like, I wrote a couple of arrangements for John and I, for quarantine married trombone players. That's what I called it.
That's great, though. I mean, that's what...
And it was a way for me to enjoy music that I haven't experienced. And it felt so fresh. And how often does music feel fresh to you?
Right. You've got to search for that.
And I think a lot of this came from, okay, so I do Broadway, and from the outside that looks amazing. And it is. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky every day. And tomorrow I might not ever, like, if my show closes tomorrow, I might not ever have another Broadway gig. That's just the way it works.
Sure.
However, when, I lost my train of thought.
Playing Broadway, talking about the
Have to cut all this out.
We're gonna have to do this heavy edit. That's all right.
The beer.
No, I'm leaving the beer in. It's part of the deal. Well, you're talking about your voice.
Oh, yeah. So you do Broadway for a while, and you realize, okay, there's nowhere to go. Like, you either on Broadway, you're successful if you have a gig, and you're unsuccessful if you don't have a gig. But really, those are the only two options.
Mm-hmm, sure.
You either have a gig or you don't. And the only hope of moving up in the world is maybe you might be an in-house contractor. There's no other. That is the end. The highest you can go is having a gig.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, that's all there is? And I had a hard time for a while because, one, I have a hard time just in general. I tend to be a depressed person. So I have to fight that a lot. I'm on medication. It's right here. Here, listen to that. Depression medication. But it's kind of, you know, having that feeling like, is this all there is? That is just, it's a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And for me to, at this age, find something that excites me in music has been such a blessing. And I don't use that word lightly because I'm not religious, but it really has been something for me to look forward to and be excited about. And God, it feels like it's a second life almost in music. And I'm into it, and I don't want to waste the time that I have now. You know, I want to use every minute of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate that, because I feel like it's easy in professional music world to get to take for granted the music itself in a way. Like, it becomes your job and you're just in it. But for you to find that thing, it's like, I'm going to continue to push this forward and to find my, you know, I don't know, to push into the unknown in a certain way. That sounds to me like that's really the crux of this band, is the idea of, like, you know, you have this opportunity to just try different things out and to push forward and to find your own voice and to express this, you know, all the different compositions from all these people that you know, and
taking like a cheesy instrumentation, what could be incredibly cheesy, and trying to make serious music with it. And I think at some point I wrote like a tagline on something: serious music, seriously fun. You know?
And I think that's such an important thing too, because it's easy in academic jazz world to be very stuffy about everything that we do.
I hate the way jazz is taught.
I agree. Of course, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of teachers. So my teacher at NEC I had known about for a long time is John McNeil.
Oh, I love John McNeil.
Yeah, and he's
a darling.
Yeah, and amazing, I would say, you know, genius, but not above having fun.
Oh God, no.
And there've been a lot of people that I've been very fortunate to meet in New York that are able to take, you know, take a certain attitude about it and have fun with it. But Dizzy Gillespie was not. This was not homework. He was up there having fun.
Yeah.
And he's a genius. You know what I mean? So there's so many people that have that mentality, I think, but it isn't. You have to. It's easy to fall into a very somber approach, let's say, to jazz world in general.
It's I mean, you have to approach most, like, okay, it can be serious. Like, I understand why it's serious, because there's history that us as white folks don't even, like, we can understand sort of, but it's, you know, it's a Black American music. Sure. And here we are trying to not co-opt it, but just sort of find our place in whatever that is. And it's a music that isn't appreciated nearly as much. It's the only American art form, really, like sure. Music. It's the only American music. And okay, country. No one can see the hand gesture I just made.
Well, but there's also, I mean, I guess there's a lot of other things that maybe come from that. Yeah, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and, and hip hop and all that stuff.
But jazz is I mean, I feel like it's so important in the story of America. And it's something I've always really appreciated, even though I felt like an outsider. And I still do, honestly, but I feel less of an outsider than I was. Yeah, so that's my goal, is to just not be as much of an outsider, sort of, put my foot in the door or something.
Sure, no doubt. Yeah, there you go. Great. All right, speaking of having fun with music, the album cover is amazing.
Yeah.
What was the mindset behind it? Like, what was the planning behind that or whatever? Like, how did you do it?
So I thought about when, so the name Not a Novelty actually came from a review from the first album. And
okay.
I've subsequently become sort of friendly with the journalist that wrote it. So the guy's name is Dan Belowski, and he lives out on Long Island. And he wrote, it's something to the effect like, from afar, this album might seem like a novelty, but the music argues successfully against that. And I was like, he totally gets it, right?
Yeah.
So not a novelty, right? So I started to think, okay, what's novelty? Like Pez head dispensers, trying to think about stuff that was novelty. And I focused on a doll. So I started Googling like human dolls, which don't do that because a lot of questionable stuff comes up.
Sure. It's a whole world. There's also people selling, this is something that I only know from recently, but people sell on eBay like dolls that are inhabited with spirits and stuff like that. There's a whole weird world out there.
Well, see, that sounds most like ghost stuff, which I could watch, but I'm thinking like the adult side of things.
Yeah, oh sure, yeah.
However, I did settle on this one photo where it looked like this woman, she was sort of had this like sad doll makeup, and she was looking at the camera kind of like making a face. And I was like, that's what I want. And I didn't really know, there definitely had to be Photoshop involved. So I settled on the guy that did my first album photos, John Abbott, who's a famous jazz photographer. And he's incredible, and I love him to death. He's so much fun to work with. So he did the photos, and then the design went to Chris Drucker, who works with Sunnyside and a bunch of other people. And
he did my album.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
But it's hard when I have, because some things he was suggesting I hated. So it's really hard. And my vibe as a female is be like, well, maybe we could do it like this. And men tend to go, no. They just sort of like, nah. So I had to really put on a different hat and be like, this needs to do this. Yeah. Because I don't like the other thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I need to be much more direct in my communication with them. And we definitely got exactly what I was looking for. Sure. So it's like a dollhouse with me being the doll and all the instruments in the dollhouse. And I think it came out well. Yeah. Yeah,
that's great. It really captures the thing. Yeah. But I think you've done a great job in general with all of this of straddling that line between very serious music and also having fun with it. Like, there's no reason that you can't have fun with the music that you're creating and also have a depth of emotion to the whole record.
I mean, thank you. That's exactly kind of what I want. I'm a jokester, but I do it because it makes me comfortable. I'm a happier person if I'm making other people laugh. It doesn't mean that I'm not serious about what I do. Sure. But that helps me deal with like my sort of depressive tendencies. So I'm always like, I always feel better if I'm making people laugh, but I also want them to take me and my music that I'm creating seriously. And so, if that comes across, I'm very thankful. And I try. John is always my gauge for that because John does not like comedy music. You know what I mean? Sure. He is a serious person except with me, he can be funny with me, but in most respects, he's not a fan of like comedy trombone, Sure. So, and he's never once like blinked an eye at any of the musical choices I've made with the album, which has meant a lot. He's always been there, like my biggest fan, but also my biggest cheerleader and supporter, and just he's got such a wealth of information that, you know, he's also my go-to person when I have questions about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. So it's been really helpful. And I mean, that's, if we're not having fun when we're doing what we are meant to be doing, what's the point? You know?
Sure.
It's just, it's not, okay, I've been super lucky, but it can be a very hard life. At times, it's hard for all of us.
Yeah.
We're constantly underemployed or overworked, you know, because when we have too many gigs, we don't ever want to say no to any of them.
Right.
Even though it's like to a detriment to our health or sleep or our relationships, you know.
Sure.
It's a hard life being a musician.
Yeah.
And thankfully, like, you and I are both married to other musicians, so they get the slog.
They get it. That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of passes that we get, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think sometimes about trying to explain what I do on the regular to somebody who came from the corporate world. It might be a little bit,
I mean,
could be cool, but it might be a little challenging.
I mean, your trumpet is basically like another person in your relationship.
Right, exactly.
But she also, your wife, has all of her instruments.
Yeah, she's got a couple instruments.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
There's a lot of people in your marriage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's something we constantly have to deal with because, you know, John's older than I am, and I don't know, I'm not sure anyone thought he'd get married again. Mm-hmm. And so I come along, and he'll want to hang out with me rather than practice sometimes or do what he's supposed to be doing or help me with something I need help with rather than work on his own shit because he wanted happiness for so long, like, you know, and it kills me because part of the reason, like, I don't ever want to take away from who he is as a musician. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. That's like a balance that we still haven't found 11 years in.
Sure.
But, I mean, he's just the best of all humans. So I can't complain. I'm not gonna
sure.
You know, if my only complaint is that he doesn't do enough for himself, you know, that's
pretty good.
Yeah.
But for you to think about that and for that to be a part of what I mean, that's a big deal. That's I probably the nature of the process, or let's say that balance is the process, is to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's a big part of the relationship is just how to balance those.
And thank God you don't have to explain it to somebody. I mean, I don't know if about your family, but my family, nobody was musical. Mm-hmm. My dad had a giant record collection that was about as musical as it got.
Sure.
So nobody understands what I do or why I do it or why I would drop anything to do a gig. I mean, their careers aren't their life, and I feel like for musicians, your career is your life.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to make that differentiation sometimes too, because you have time off and somebody calls you for a gig and you're going to do it because you want to do it because it's fun. Whereas other people are like, this is my vacation week or whatever.
I mean, yeah. I don't know if you have this problem. I have a hard time relaxing when I'm on vacation.
I have a horrible time relaxing. Yeah, Emily and I, we were on vacation.
She brought her saxophone on your honeymoon, or wasn't it? Didn't she?
We both brought instruments. Yeah, we're a mess,
I
man.
Did too.
I
did too.
I got a pocket trumpet, so I could put it in the suitcase and bring it to Bora Bora or whatever. But
that is hilarious.
Yeah, we were playing a little bit, but we were on vacation, just not as elaborate as the honeymoon, but we were out in New Hampshire and we're on paddle boards in the middle of the lake. And she's like, I got to answer these emails and stuff. And we're like, we got to do this. And we had to tell each other, like, this is not cool.
Yeah.
We're on a lake.
Yeah.
There's nothing here to do. You got to stop it. But it's a blessing and a curse, of course, because I've been thinking about that a lot recently, especially I think in COVID, because we don't have the opportunity to interact with each other in the same way that we would normally. It's been a very substantial reevaluation, I think, of everything that we do. I think for a lot of people, we've been really thinking about, like, what are we really trying to do here? What is our career? What are our careers and everything? But to me, I want to be perpetually grateful that I have the opportunity to wake up in the morning. Like, I don't always want to teach all afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes, okay, this is a different thing. But I love doing it. You know what I mean? Sometimes, but I have to remind myself, like, this is a real blessing to be able to sit, work with kids and I do love it. I just mean that, exactly.
About your legacy,
and bring people into that world. Like my day, I wake up and I get to be in that world all the time. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Yeah. But it can be overwhelming because you also, if you work a 9-to-5 job, when Friday at 5 o'clock comes around, you're out.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Isn't that, don't you... I dream of, because I have had a 9-to-5 job, and it made me love music more because I had to do the other thing. But can you imagine if you could just drop the music thing for a weekend and not feel bad about it?
Yeah.
Imagine what that would feel like.
Right.
I mean, it's literally, it's like, it's for people that don't know, it's like another person. It's like you're married to somebody else, or you're you have a pet with really sad eyes that if you don't pay attention to it, or it's a jealous lover that will slap your face real hard when you come back.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
you have to pay the price when you come back if you take time away from
For sure,
that.
especially as playing brass instruments.
Oh
It's
my
an
God,
endless
it's the worst
thing. So what's next for you? What's your next plan?
So like I said, I'm writing, and I wrote a commission. Hopefully, we'll get to play it. We did record it virtually, and I'm going to send that to the people that commissioned us. And I'm not sure, maybe make more adjustments depending on how I dig it. It's in harmonic major.
Nice.
Which I learned about last semester.
Okay.
I've never heard about that before. For all of you keeping track, it is a major scale with a flatted 6, which I wrote it in. It's a B harmonic major, but I wrote it in the key of D because I was thinking the relative minor, and then that's the wrong key. You should write it in. You should write it without a key, I think. You should write it without a key because it's such a weird scale.
Yeah.
Like, people don't practice that scale. So,
Sure.
Yeah. But I want to write more. I have a couple performances coming up with the band. So June 11th, we're going to be playing in Long Island City at Culture Lab. And then in July, we're going to Iowa. We're going to have a gig in Des Moines on the 2nd, and then a gig in Iowa City on the 3rd.
In what, say again, what month?
July.
July 2nd and 3rd. 4th of July weekend, 2 days before.
Yes.
In Iowa. What's going on in Iowa?
So we were booked for the Iowa City Jazz Festival last year, and so they rebooked us for this year. So we're going, and it'll be the full band minus Nate. Nate is not going to be with us, but Sarah Giacovino is going to be playing the role of Nate.
Who wrote a tune on the first album? Is that right?
Yeah, Nate wrote a tune on the first album.
Sarah also.
Oh, Sarah did too, yeah. Yeah. Both of them wrote a tune, yeah. And she's a great, for a while when we were working together on King Kong, I was saying, okay, when is the Sarah Giacovino big band happening? Because apparently she's got like a ton of music written, but she just, having a band is a great way to lose money, and
especially a big band. I mean,
well, yeah, I have 7 players, and I'm probably going to lose money on this, but
people don't realize that.
No, they don't realize
another thing that I want to do with this is just to give the people a little bit of a realistic understanding of what goes into the music world, especially nowadays. There's nobody coming out of the woodworks. John Hammond isn't coming out of the woodworks to be like, here's $1 million to make your next album.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Jeff Bezos, I take donations.
Yeah.
Or your ex-wife, her too.
She might be on point. Yeah, she's trying to get rid of that money.
Or Bill and Melinda. I'm here for you.
They want to. If the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation wants to support some trombone music, they know what to look for.
I mean, come on. I was labeled trombone ecstasy. Come on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. And then and you'll work it someday. You'll do another album and.
Yeah, I mean, so I already have a list of things that I want to do for the next album. I always have lists. I have constant lists. One I want to write, but I think so I have to do a recording project for my master's. So I have a year. My final for that, it's not really final. I get together and I meet with them and talk about my concept. And I think I'm going to do all music that I write for my band, but I'm not going to make it like an album for my band. I'm going to do it because I don't know if it's going to be good.
Okay.
And I don't want to ask people to pay for something that I'm not sure is going to be good. It might be good, but I think, us as musicians, we shouldn't dive into something without sort of vetting it first.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially because this is something that I struggle with, is that I'm working professionally on a certain level. I don't want to hear people to hear me struggle. And that's
Sure.
really hard. That's really hard because that's the enemy of progress. You know, getting out and playing should be what I'm striving for. And instead, I'm very, very shy about putting anything out that I don't have complete control over. You know, I'm very, I try to keep everything close to the vest.
Sure.
Because I don't want, you know, me like hacking through a blues somewhere on social media to be the reason I don't get called for a gig.
It's tricky, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's tricky. But that's, I mean, it's kind of a great opportunity for you, especially writing, to be able to do the stuff for the masters. And then you be able to say, all right, this is an exploration, but there's no obligation. It's not like I have a deadline that I have to put this album out or whatever. I can explore the realms of the music that, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. So I can, you know, work and kind of, I like the idea of speaking to a broader audience of, I mean, because, you know, it's a trombone band, even though it's not really a trombone band. It looks like a trombone band to most people. So they think, oh, well, only trombone people are going to be interested in it. And, you know, to a certain extent, that is my designated audience.
Sure.
But I want to speak to the people that maybe think that jazz, like, kind of like I thought it for a while, jazz wasn't my scene, but it's not magic how people learn how to improvise.
Right.
It's not magic, and people aren't, I mean, most people aren't born with it. It is like taking your scales that you know and taking some rhythms that you know and combining them and finding the right combinations and listening and stealing from people that you like.
Yeah.
That's mostly what it is, right?
Yeah, in the process and just
and
doing
then
that
figuring
a lot.
out who you are within all that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain, like, there's language that you should know and need to know, and I'm trying my hardest to try to get to know, but I also hate the idea of learning licks.
Right. I'm with you on that. But it's a challenge because it's easy to learn all the licks and have sort of a cut and paste operation, but
Yeah,
it feels like the people that are my heroes, I'm not going to be able to, you know, say, oh, here's all the licks that, you know what I mean? It's about being organic in your approach.
But also, if you have cut and paste, is that improvisation? And that's kind of what I struggle with. Like, my ideal of what jazz isn't true often. If you listen to some of the alternate takes of J.J. Johnson, many of them start exactly the same, the first chorus, right?
Sure.
And not to say that he's not a genius and he wasn't awesome at what he did, but to peel back the curtain and look in on some of the stuff that we think is magic has been eye-opening for me. I want to find more of what I have to say, and that's hard without sort of doing more listening. I got out of the habit of listening because I had a really bad experience in my first attempt at my master's in graduate school. I went to MSM and had a really bad experience, and I sort of it was like a part of me died, honestly. And
what happened?
I had a really bad experience with a teacher, and he said something that sort of, we all have negative self-talk, but he was like, what he said sort of confirmed my worst negative self-talk.
Okay.
And I just took that, was like, well, I guess I've been right all along, you know,
Sure,
kind of a
right,
thing.
right.
And
Boy, that's a shame. Yeah.
yeah, it was a real drag. But the problem, I mean, like, okay, he said what he said, and if I had been stronger mentally, I might have been able to be like, well, he's just an asshole, because he was, and most people hate the guy.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, if I had had that point of view, I could have been fine. But instead, it's like part of my musical life died. And I've been struggling to revive it since.
Okay.
And I let it lie dead for a long time. I did triathlons as a way to not practice for like 10 years.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so to really tap into something musical and enjoy myself again has been huge, but it's also super scary. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, how to even proceed.
Yeah.
It's been hard and exciting and horrifying.
Sure.
All of
Even
the
in the
above.
midst of all the stuff that you've done up to this point. But that's amazing. That's what you want. And that seems to be the culmination, really, of this band and this album and what you're doing. It's perfect.
Yeah, just keep making more awesome music and make people hate how much they love the trombone.
That's what I want. That's what I want. I want more of that. Yeah. I want to address the haters real quick. I want to end with a quote. All right.
Okay.
Now this is from our buddy Hector Berlioz.
Oh yeah, that's a good quote.
In my opinion, the trombone is the true head of the family of wind instruments, which I have named the epic one. It possesses nobility and grandeur to the highest degree. It has all the serious and powerful tones of sublime musical poetry, from religious, calm, and imposing accents to savage, orgiastic outburst. Directed by the will of the master, the trombones can chant like a choir of priests, threaten utter gloomy sighs, a mournful lament, or a bright hymn of glory. They can break forth into awe-inspiring cries and awaken the dead, or doom the living with their fearful voices.
I just want to point out the orgiastic Bonegasm.
That's really the backbone
Hector
of the whole...
knew what he was talking about. He'd dig my band.
For 100%, yeah. Great. Well, thanks, Jen. I think we've done it.
Yeah. Well, I need something else to drink.